everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm super excited to be speaking here today. Today I'll be teaching you how to build interactive async UI with React 19 and Ariakit. So my name is Aurora. I'm from Norway, currently living and working in Oslo. I'm a front-end developer, Microsoft MVP in web technologies, and React educator. My primary role is a consultant at Crane Consulting. However, I'm also the React certification lead at certificates.dev. And in my primary role, I'm actively building with the Next.js App Router using React 19, including server components and other features. So that's where I get my inspiration from. And on that note, what was the inspiration behind this talk? Well, I was working on a feature which demanded quite a few different things. It motivated me to recreate the feature as a demo, which is what I will showcase today. For that feature, I needed to build a new UI component given to me in Figma. There were a lot of interactions with custom styles and state specified, and no existing component in our design system and component library that could fill these requirements. So I was faced with this problem: creating UI components with custom design from scratch. Does this page scare you a little bit? It definitely scares me. This is the WCAG 2 standards. In Norway, we actually have a requirement to follow the WCAG standards in public applications to ensure accessible applications for everyone, and we can even be fined if we don't adhere to them. So this is a pretty big deal, at least for us in Norway, for everyone, of course, but definitely for the application that I was working on. But the problem is I'm not an accessibility expert, and I don't have any dedicated resource to help me directly. So I had another problem: building UI that is accessible without writing the code for that yourself. And I had a third problem, one commonly encountered in React: handling asynchronous operations smoothly and avoiding flickering pending states and unstable UX without lots of code. Here's an example of those problems happening in this checkout cart. As you can see, the pending state is not synced to the server finishing its update, and the code is not the prettiest either. So to solve all of this, I used a number of tools. Tailwind CSS was just the best way for me to effectively style the component based on the Figma sketches. I used that already, and I wanted to keep using it with this component. Tailwind CSS v4 just came out recently as well, so let's use that later in the demo. As for the accessibility, I used Ariakit, which provides unstyled, accessible primitives for components like select, menu, and more. It's optimized for screen reader, it has keyboard support, and follows the WCAG standard. We already used this in my design system component library and had a really positive experience with it. And by the way, the menus in the documentation are like insane, obviously created with Ariakit itself. Just look at this focus management. Wow. And finally, for handling the asynchronous operations, I used features from React 19. There's a lot here to help us with async management. Namely, actions through new hooks like use transition and use optimistic, plus server functions which simplify communication with the server. So basically, these are the tools that allow me to build the feature. Let's see how to combine them by heading over to a demo. All right, so what you're looking at here is this project dashboard demo app with an account selector. This is based on a real feature I built for my current project, the inspiration behind this talk. So let's pretend that the designer just gave you this nice custom UI in Figma with a custom account selector here that didn't exist in your component library. So you built it yourself. And all is well, right? Let's try this out. The keyboard navigation is incorrectly implemented. I would be expecting to use the up-down arrow keys to interact with this, but that's not working. So I guess I'm using tab. So now I'm tabbing through this menu, and then I get stuck outside the menu without it closing, and I can't click outside, and there's no way for me to do escape here. What about the actual switch? Well, I can switch account with this account selector, and I have this spinner, but the spinner disappeared there before the server was actually done updating the UI. So I have also this out of sync and confusing UX. So basically, I have these challenges. I'm trying to build a custom UI component, but I want it to be accessible. But I'm not an accessibility expert. I also want to smoothly handle async operations with a good UX, but I don't want to write lots of code to get this right. So I was in this situation not long ago. That's why I'm here, to help you if you ever encounter something similar. And the goal is to make this custom account selector interactive and accessible, and improve the unstable UX using certain tools, Ariakit and React 19. So let's get to the code. So the setup here is the Next.js App Router. I'm using Prisma ORM and Prisma Postgres database and Tailwind CSS v4. I already completed all of the data fetching in here, so we can just check out the page. I'm using App Router. Since I'm using App Router, I can use server components. So this is a server component, fetching data and passing it down. You see when I load the page, I have this nice fallback UI with suspense. I also have a data access layer with my services here, fetching the project. And I also have this simulated authentication with the get or current account, which is just getting a cookie basically. And then, yeah, so it's just simulating authentication. And everything here is dynamically rendered and then just streamed using server components. And all of this is not the focus of today. I've covered this in previous talks. So if you're interested in that, you can watch those, or you can just check out the code later. Because this is just setup, but our problems are in this account selector component. It's reading a promise here from the server of the current account with React 19 use. And you'll see here the sort of typical React code that you probably have seen a million times before. So I have a bunch of states: pending state, current account state, expanded state. I have this huge function, handle switch account, which is setting all of the states. It's also calling my API to fetch the account. And then also I have this optimistic update, which is rolling back when there's an error. And then I also have a toast. So this is quite a lot of code, and it is quite prone to bugs because my optimistic update is not, well, we don't know exactly how this is going to act on the edge cases. Let's say I just coded this up and without thinking too much about it, and it works, but yeah, it could be better. What about the JSX itself? I see here that it's really hard to read all of the divs and spans through this component. I even put markings to know what's what here. So yeah, it's not accessible, and it's definitely hard to read what is happening inside this component. Let's try to fix the accessibility issues just to see what it would be like. So let's say we wanted to fix the escape key not working. We could handle the escape key. That would be an effect. It would look like this. And it works, so that's good. What about the keyboard navigation here? Let's handle keyboard navigation and focus. Okay, this is quite a lot more code, huh? And this is just two of the many interactions that we would need, like click outside, keyboard nav, escape key, smart positioning, and don't even get me started on the area attributes that we're lacking. Let's not go there. Let's instead get rid of this code. And we're going to just import Ariakit. So I want to use Ariakit to solve this problem. Ariakit is a React library that provides unstyled, primitive components and hooks for building interactive UIs. It provides declarative components that are accessible by default, following the WCAG standard, and have all the functionality that we need built in, and they can compose together. So I just want to step-by-step replace everything in the component here with the Ariakit equivalent. Let's begin by removing the relative from the parentive here, because Ariakit is going to handle this positioning for us. And to make everything work, we need to begin with a select provider. So this is going to be a select, that's why I'm picking select, but you can pick any UI component that's suitable. So I'm going to wrap this here. And then for the next one, I have this label here. So that's easy, just replace this with a select label. What about the open button? Well, this is the actual select itself, right? And we don't want to set expanded ourselves. Let's remove this expanded state because we're going to let Ariakit handle that. So right now, my select is not working. And I can no longer use this expanded state here because that's not being set by me. So I need to find an alternative to make this chevron spin. First of all, I can replace this with a select item, a select arrow, and remove all of my attributes here. And then I want to rotate it. So instead of using the expanded state, I'm going to use an aria attribute, aria expanded, rotate 180. So Ariakit applies aria attributes in the correct way to its elements, and then we can use those assistants to do apply our styling. But it's not this select arrow that's expanded, it's the select itself. So we can add a group onto the select and do group area expanded here. That's when we want to rotate 180 degrees. And then we have our spinning arrow again. All right. What about the select button here? It does not change color anymore. I'm gonna remove my whole expanded state here, and instead I want to render a select button. So the render prop allows us to customize what's being rendered. Here I'm rendering a select button, and here I'm using the aria expanded to apply all of my styles according to the expanded state. So that I have this nice CSS being applied based on the expanded state again. All right, let's keep moving. For the popover, it's not working, right? So let's get rid of this expanded wrapper and replace this with a select popover. And yeah, over here. And then I have this absolute positioning that I don't need anymore. And we can replace our top 20 with a gutter of 8. So gutter 8. And my popover is working again. And I also am able to click outside, actually, and click escape. All provided by Ariakit. And it also has this viewport aware placement, so you'll see it's smart to position there. Excuse me. Let's keep moving down to the first select item, which is this options here. So this is a select item. Excuse me, my throat. Excuse me, I was having some issues with my throat there. Let's get back to the code. Yeah, let's get on to the first options item. So this is this one. Instead of doing this, we're going to replace this with a select item. And it has this hover state, but when I focus it, there is actually no visible state on it. So again, here we want to use these attributes provided by Ariakit to apply our styling. Instead of doing hover, let's do a data active item. So Ariakit applies this and it will work for both hover and focus so that it is accessible. Let's do the same for the actual items in here. So I'm going to remove my comment here and do select item. And I need to also put it down here. So now again, I can style this with the data active item. So here I have this focus visible. Let's actually do the hover first. The hover, we're going to do, instead of hover, data active item. So it will be working again. with both the keyboard or the hover. And then when we're working with something like a select, where there is this visual indication that we are on an active item, actually we need to provide a better contrast when the user is using the keyboard, because in that case the keyboard is the only way to know what item we are about to select. So to do that, we can just switch this focus visible to a data focus visible, so that when I'm using the mouse here, I have the regular hover state, but when I'm using the keyboard, I have this increased contrast. Going further down, I have this active item check. Let's replace this with a select item check from Ariakit. And it just disappeared, and that's fine because we still need to add a value to our select item, which is just going to be the current account ID. Account ID. And it will already be working again. And we also need to add the same value to the select provider to tie it all together. Like that. And finally, we can remove our expanded state. We are not using this anymore. And we can remove our set expanded. And all of this is in the documentation, by the way, included how to style every Ariakit component based on different CSS requirements. And there's also docs for non-Tailwind users. This is just a Tailwind version that I've been basing myself on, but it's just as easy with regular CSS. And they have like tooltips, dialogues, anything that you might need in your application. So now in our JSX, we no longer have a bunch of nameless divs, but readable declarative components that automatically handle all of the accessibility for us. So I have I click outside, I have my keyboard navigation already built in, everything that I would expect from a menu. Now let's get to work on the async operation, the account switching. So this is a lot of boilerplate code. And I also need to fix the spinner that is like out of sync here with the server, right? So fortunately, React has an API for this, which is transitions. Transitions allow React to coordinate async requests in events and render. So let's see how we can use transitions here to create a better experience with no sync issues and less code. So to track the loading state, let's use the improved version of use transition from React 18. It returns to us a pending state and a function to start a transition. So we can get rid of our manual pending state. And what we want to do is wrap our whole async call with this start transition function. And we can make it async because that's an improvement in React 19. And we can just wrap this here. Like that. So it lets us mark this state update as non-urgent or deferred and commits all of the changes once they're all done. And we get this automatic pending state that we can use to handle the spinner. We're actually creating what's called an action here. So an action is just a function called in transition, which gives us a name for this sort of lower priority behavior. Let's see if it works. So I have my spinner, and it is spinning all the way until the entire interaction is done. So we don't have that weird out of sync state anymore. Now for the API call. Let's replace this API call with a call to the server. So we're just going to do await switch account. Direct call to the server. And let's do account ID. Switch account is actually what's called a server function. So server function is a React Native feature that lets us call server code from the client as a function directly. And we get this hidden API endpoint under the hood So here I have this cookie again being set, simulating authentication. And we also get type safety across the server boundary. So I can actually see that the shape of my response does not correspond to the previous response, which means that I just have to change this to an if response.error. If the response does not have an error. And then we don't need to parse this body anymore because it's automatically parsed. And we can just do the response error directly. Excuse me, where's my recording? All right. Yeah, so we can just toast the error directly. And then with server functions, we can actually also call a Next.js API called revalidate path in here and just say this root path. So now we don't actually need to sorry, I'm messing up a lot of things right now. Revalidate path with a root path like that. So that means we don't need this router refresh anymore. And we can remove our whole router code from this. And we can even just delete our whole API layer because we don't need this anymore. We're using server functions. Let's see if it's going to work still. Right, so we have all the same interactions, but with less code. Finally, what about my set current account here, the optimistic update that I created? So I'm doing this manual rollback. And if I remove this and just show you why I have this rollback, you'll see if I just use this directly and just rename this to current account. The reason I added that is because when I click, the select actually feels stuck if I don't have this optimistic update, right? Because I clicked it and it didn't update. So that's why I added this optimistic update. But there is a better way to handle this, which is React 19 use optimistic. Use optimistic lets us handle optimistic updates more easily, and it works alongside actions. So within a transition, well, let me just get the API first. So we can get this use optimistic hook, and it takes in a state to show when no action is pending, which is just going to be our current account from the server here. And then it returns an optimistic account and a trigger function to set this. So we can call this inside a transition with our new account. So it's going to be the account. And then it will persist this state for as long as the transition is still running and then fall back to the current account when it's done. So we can just use this optimistic account for all of our current account values in this app. Like that. Optimistic account. And let's see if that's going to work. So you'll see it now has this optimistic update in a much easier way, and it will automatically roll back. And that becomes clear with a disabled account. So let me just comment out this disabled state so you can see what happens. So when I select an invalid account, I have this optimistic state still, but it automatically, disabled. Let's try the inactive one. This one is inactive. It will be optimistic, but then it will just automatically roll back because the value that was passed here no longer matched the temporary client state. So it has this automatic rollback, basically. So notice how my handle switch account interaction here is completely smooth. We fixed the out of sync loading state, and we have a more robust optimistic update that works with the transition with less code and no UX problems. So I'm already done with my improvements here, but let's add some final features showcasing the customizability of Ariakit. Let's get to the bottom here. And we're going to add another custom UI element to the select under this divider. We're going to add a logout button. So this is the logout button. It's here. And on click, I just want to have this custom event here. I want to just call my logout server function, like that. And then I want to also track the pending state. So let's get another transition. Let's get a logout transition with logout is pending. We can start this around the server function. And make it async because it can be async in React 19. And then we can use the disable this if the logout is pending, and use the already disabled here to style it. So now I have this new feature allowing me to log out of the app. All right, let's do like a final demo of all of this. Let's try it from here. So let's just log it back in first. So I can load the page and view the URI right away, getting the stable loading state with suspense, fallbacks, and server components. I can navigate using the tabs here as expected. And when I open the menu, it is easy to use, accessible. I have my keyboard navigation, my focus trap, click outside. I have my escape key, everything I would need here for a good UX on this select. And just trust me, the screen reader is also good because I didn't touch it. I just let Ariakit do all of the work. Then we can execute the switch. We have this very smooth, optimistic update. Yeah, and finally, we have this custom item in the menu allowing us to log out. So let's get back to the slides. And just summarize what we were able to achieve through this demo. So with Ariakit, we were able to build fully accessible UI, including keyboard management, click outside functionality, focus management, and screen reader support. We were able to easily customize the UI and style it with our normal Tailwind CSS flow using data and array attributes provided. We also got this clean, declarative, composable component code without boilerplate. And with React 19, we were able to streamline our server communication using server functions, skipping the API layer. We utilized alternatives to common solutions like useState, useEffect, and got smooth interactions and simplified loading states through actions with useTransition. And we achieved instant user feedback and error rollback with useOptimistic. I mean, just look at this diff that we created in the demo. It's just so much better, right? And with that, this is the repo for the application. You can also access it through the QR code and see this improved version of the account selector using Ariakit with all of the latest features included. And if you're interested in verifying and improving your React skills, or you want to learn React best practices or even advanced topics, the React certification at Certificates Dev is now available. So this certification will test your knowledge through questions and coding challenges, and includes also training content to guide you while you're preparing. So I lead the content creation for the certification, and of course, I'm very biased, but I believe it's a great way to increase your knowledge and get validated credentials. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for having me here. Bye.